This is the Living History Podcast, broadcasting live across the airwaves.
Hello everyone, welcome to Living History and an episode I've really been looking forward to. I'm sitting here with the wonderful Mr. Eric Bogle. We've got a couple of cold beers. We're sitting in his front room. And this is an evening with Eric Bogle. We're just going to sit here and just have a chat about some of the wonderful contribution he's made to the Anzac story. Because he has. Eric Bogle, he'll probably deny it himself, but has been instrumental in many ways of this idea of remembering the Anzacs, remembrance, and he's been involved in our shaping of the remembrance of Anzac. So I'm really looking forward to this. Eric, thanks so much for joining us.
No problem at all. Therell be an invoice for the cold beer later on, by the way, but never mind.
I'd expect nothing less. Let's start. I'd love to hear the Eric Bogle story. Why don't we start way at the beginning? Tell us about your life growing up in Scotland before this Australian adventure even began.
Well, how long have we got? I'll do the censored version. Basically, I grew up in a small country town called Peebles, which is in the borders of Scotland, about 5,000 people. And even though our nearest village in Olethen was only 5 miles away, they spoke in a totally different dialect. You know, you've come across it yourself in your historical work, no doubt, that in peasant societies, which I came from, people didn't travel all that much in the old days. And so cultures and dialects coexisted side by side with a matter of miles in between them at times. So I was brought up in Peebles, Scotland, which I thought was the centre of the universe. When I became a teenager, I realised I wasn't. And instead of being a haven, it became a prison. Any teenager listening to your podcast, there'll not be many of them, but if there is, will recognise that feeling. And once I realised that there was a world out there that I knew nothing about, I wanted to see it, so off I went. So I left home when I was 16 and never really returned. I returned when I was out of work and broke a couple of times to bludgeon my parents. But basically, emotionally, I'd cut it all off. I then drifted, basically. I had about 15, 16 jobs. I got fired from half of them for various reasons. And then I got engaged a couple of times. I sang for a rock group.
You got engaged a couple of times?
Yeah, to women, yes. Not engaged in conversation.
I love how you just throw that out casually. I was engaged a couple of times.
Well,
broke a few hearts.
I was a teenager. I mean, you know, I was young. I'm still a teenager, really. It was part of my drifting process. I couldn't put down any anchors anywhere to guide me. And I got involved with music early on. One of the things about growing up in Scotland way back then in the late 40s and early 50s was that music was part of our lives so much because we made our own, because we didn't have all the social media stuff that's available today, and we were too poor to afford a radio. So, but music was a factor the only factor that bound our family together.
Were your parents musical, brothers and sisters?
My father played the bagpipes when he was younger, so no, he wasn't musical at all. My mother's family were all musical. My mother sang in a slightly off-key soprano. Nobody ever told her that. We all said, that was lovely, Nancy, but it wasn't. My sisters are both tone deaf. I've got two sisters. They can't even speak in tune, never mind sing. And so I was the one that was gifted with what little talent was going around. And music initially was an anchor for me. And also one of the few things that our family did together. I came from a fairly dysfunctional family. And one of my fondest memories of the family, and I've not got many of them, were listening on a Sunday night to Vera Lynn sings all together. And we'd all sit there for half an hour to listen to Vera Lynn sings. My father, Mum, me and my sisters. And that was one of the very few things we did together as a family when I was a child. So music always meant that bit more to me than it meant to a lot of people, I think. I sang for a local rock and roll group, Eric and the Informers, for a while. We were crap, but we had a great time. And then a few things happened in my life, and I thought, I've got to get out of here. I was still in Peebles, and my life was going round in circles. And I could see the future, and it wasn't particularly attractive. So I thought, let's get out of here. So I came to Australia.
What age were you when you made the move to Australia?
24.
And roughly what year was this?
1969.
How was that experience? So you're a young, fit,
handsome.
Pick an adjective. Scottish, talented musician.
God.
You arrive on these shores. Well, firstly, what was your impression of arriving in Australia from little old Peebles?
Well, my abiding memory of the arrival was in July the 22nd, 1969. So it was winter. I was sailing up Sydney Harbour on this diamond hard morning. Bright as a diamond it was. And Sydney just shimmering all around the boat. And I can remember all of us, 2,000 people in the Fair Star, the hell ship of the South Pacific, just lining the decks, in silence, just, watching this incredible vista before us and thinking, what's it going to be like, It was a good start, though. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. I've never forgotten it. And funnily enough, I don't like Sydney, but coming into it was beautiful.
Did you know when you arrived that this was your permanent move, or was it just for a year or two? What was your expectation?
Oh, my expectations were nil. I wanted to get away from the past, such as it was. I was only 24, so I didn't have a huge past, but you have to realise that coming from a small society with a name, the name of Bogle within the wee town I lived in denoted drunkards and brawlers. That was just the way it was. So there was, the fastest gun in town syndrome, where strangers would come up to me in pubs and challenge me, just because of my name. It didn't happen every night, but it happened enough to get annoying. So I've always described landing in Australia as a rebirth, and a lot of people find that overly dramatic, but it was for me. I got off the ship in Sydney. Nobody knew who the hell I was. Nobody cared what school I was going to, what my name was. All the contract was, I presented myself as myself, and they either accepted it or rejected it. And what I was a reasonably quiet, peaceable man. And it was just such a relief to be myself after years in this small country town being a Bogle. That sounds dramatic, but in some ways it was. So that was the great thing I remember about coming to Australia, a rebirth. I could be exactly who I was. Not who I wanted to be or who I thought I was, just what I was.
Did you know when you stepped off that ship that music was going to be your life, or was it just a part of who you were at that time?
Oh no, very much a part, and not a big part. you know.
I've got this impression of a young Eric Bogle walking down the gangplank with a guitar on his back and his wide eyes taking in the view and heading off to the nearest folk club and signing up for a gig.
Well, I certainly had a guitar, and it wasn't strapped on my back that I was carrying it, but and I headed off to the nearest pub, actually. But music, I knew, was part of my life. It's always been a strong part of my life. But I never thought it would take over my life, which it eventually did. And what I remember about when I walked down Pitt Street in Sydney and, you know, waited, I was waiting to go to the airport to get a plane down to Canberra, which was my final destination, because my sister lived there with my brother-in-law, and they'd sponsored me to come to Australia. So the thing that struck me was this almost palpable air of confidence and energy, and we're going places. You can almost touch it, you know. It was, God, it's changed, you know. But that's what I remember most about Sydney, walking down Pitt Street, and they were just surrounded with all this crackling energy, and thinking, wow, this is some place, you know. How am I going to handle this? You know, a couple of wee quiet country tune. And then I went to Canberra and everything changed.
How did your career begin in Australia? How did you go from being someone who played a bit of music to making it such a major part of your life and beginning to achieve some success with it?
Well, it was by accident. I mean, my life plan has always been, you know, try not to bump into the furniture. I mean, that's as much as I've thought. It was by accident, really. I got a job within a week when I arrived in Canberra. Way back in 1969, it was full employment, folks. You had the choice of jobs. Happy days. And eventually I started off working in a builder's yard as a leading hand after lying about my past qualification, which has been a sort of thing I've done all my life. And I worked my way into the office, then up to... Eventually I ended up as the state accountant for Queensland for the company I worked for. And in 1980, a few things led me to question the future, if this is what I want to do. So I always look in the mirror and talk to myself. It's the only way I can get a sensible answer out of life. And I said, do you want to do this for the rest of your life, Eric? And my reflection said, no. So I said, what are you going to do? And my reflection said, I don't know. What I'm going to do is stop being an accountant. I had no idea what I was going to do, and I was really quite miserable. I wasn't fulfilled emotionally and all that sort of stuff. So I went home and I said to Carmel, I've resigned. Carmel, my wife. And she wasn't surprised. Wives know these things. And she said, what are we going to do? And I said, no idea. I said, we'll leave Brisbane, go back down south. I'll take a while off real work until I decide what I want to do the rest of my life. And music slowly took over. At that stage, I'd written quite a few songs and just sung them in folk clubs. I'd never sung them anywhere else. But the songs began to travel on their own. They got their own wee impetus. And the folk circuit, the folk scene, the jungle drums, whatever you want to call it. Carmel and I went back to Scotland in 1975 so she could meet my mum and dad. And unbeknown to me, the band people Matilda was the song in the clubs. It had travelled to Britain through a devious means, and everybody was singing it. I was totally unaware of this until I was working at the local mill back home to get enough money to come back to the promised land. We'd been in Scotland a couple of years. Mum and Dad had died. Both died when I was there. So Cam and I were working jobs to get money to come back to Australia. And this fellow in a Scottish Gas uniform turned up at my work, asked to see me, and I went down to the front desk and he said, "Are you Eric Bogle?" And I said, "I think so." And he said, "Did you write a song called The Band Played Waltz Matilda?" And you could have literally knocked me down with a feather. I said, "How the hell do you know that?" He said, "Don't you know everybody's singing it here?" And I said, "No, I don't." And a girl had been at the folk club the night before, a Scots girl who was living in Australia, and she'd sung the song, and Harry Matheson, the chap I was speaking to, said, "Oh, it was a Scots lad, Eric Bogle, he's in Australia now." And she said, "No, he's back in Scotland at the moment. I think he's back in his hometown." So he came down to Peebles, walked up and down the high street asking if anybody knew me, and most people said, no, never heard of him. Such is fame. And that's how it started, really. But nonetheless, I came back to Australia and resumed my accountancy career. But in 1980, I'd had enough. So Cam and I moved back to Sydney, and I said to her, "I'm going to do some music, earn some pin money, and then I'll probably go back into real life, in a couple of years." And music just gradually took over my life. So it was never a huge ambition I had to become a full-time musician. I won't use the word professional because I'm not. It just happened to me. Like most of the good things in my life have just happened to me without any effort on my part.
You mentioned that song, The Band Played Waltzing Matilda, probably your most famous song, the song you're best known for. What was the story? How did that song come about? I mean, it's fascinating that you're talking now about the song took on a life of its own before you were well known as a musician.
Yep.
So you obviously didn't write it with the intention of it becoming the absolutely legendary song that it is. What was the motivation? What was the story behind writing that song?
Well, I wrote it in 1971 in Canberra after I watched my first Anzac Day parade. Never seen one before. Watched it. The Vietnam War was going on at the time, as you remember. Some real bad shit happening, Lots of moratorium work and protests. Anzac parades being, disrupted and all that sort of stuff. And I'm a sucker for parades, especially military ones, so I was torn. It was really strange because I was part of the moratorium movement at the uni in the ACT, and yet I wanted to see this Anzac Day parade because I'd never seen one. And as a couple of the veterans were being wheeled past, the band in front of them was playing Waltzing Matilda. And I got the idea for the hook then. And I wanted to write an anti-war song because Vietnam was happening at the time. So really the song was about Vietnam. I didn't set it there because nobody knew where it was. I mean, it was really disturbing that Australian boys are being killed out there daily. And yet if I'd turned up to most Australians with a map and said, point to where Vietnam is, they couldn't have done it. I had no idea. Why are we there? Because the commies are there, So it was a war that was happening in the newspapers in a place far away. So there's no point in writing about, fuck tea Providence and, all that sort of stuff. No Australians would have identified with that. So I set it in Gallipoli, and I've always made the point, it doesn't matter where the song is set, where the war is being fought, because all wars are the same, with the same end results. And the motivations for most wars are exactly the same as well. So I could have set it in Patagonia, and it would still have the same message. And that was the message I was trying to get across with my limited audience, People, I'd like to change the world with my songs, but I don't think I can. And I expected the song to die when the Vietnam... the boys came home the year after, 1972. And I put the song away. That was it. Even though not many people knew the songs was written or inspired by Vietnam, I knew it. And I thought, well, I've said my piece. And originally when I wrote the song as well, it was 8 verses long. It lasted about 12 minutes. It was only after people killed themselves and threw themselves out of windows when I sang it that I decided to sort of edit it to a listenable length.
Do you still have the old verses?
No.
The secret verses? Do you even remember the secret verses?
I can remember a few phrases, but the reason it was so long is I kept repeating myself all the time. So one of the first lessons you learn, or should learn about songwriting, is to be as brief as possible in what you're trying to say. Most people who know my songs will laugh when I say that, but believe you me, I tried to cut it down to 4 verses, couldn't. It's now 5. So the boys came back from Vietnam. The whole thing simmered down. Gough Whitlam ushered in a new shining era for Australia. And I thought, here we go again. You know, after a hiatus, we're off. Didn't last long. But anyway, the song was shelved for 2 or 3 years. And then I sang it at a songwriting contest by sheer accident. It's a long story, and I won't bore your podcast listeners with it. Suffice to say, I opened my guitar case, and there was the lyrics, and I thought, oh yes, I remember that. So I sang it, got an incredible reaction to it. And this was the first time I think I'd sang the truncated version. I can't be sure about that, but I think it was. Anyway, incredible reaction. And the first prize, this was in Brisbane, a national festival in Brisbane, 1974. First prize was an Ovation guitar. And I thought, it's mine, it's mine. Thank God I didn't win it. Anyway, I came third. And it caused a furore. People jostling the judges. We're talking about folk music here. It was like being involved in a hip-hop brawl. And sort of paradoxical because of the stramash that the song coming third had caused, got the song more publicity. No such thing as bad publicity. And a few people asked me to sing their song at the little Grundig tape recorders, which I did. One of them, lassie from the Channel Islands originally, took it across to England where June Tabor picked it up. This was 1975 or 74, I can't remember. And the song then, Archie Fisher spread it to North America, and Liam Clancy and Tommy Makem recorded and got to #1 in Ireland. And I was totally unaware of all this stuff, you know. So that's how Matilda was born and how it was regenerated time after time. It's the hook that people still hang my hat on, and I'm happy for them to do so. It's a careless song, I think. It's an honest song. If any future people, when I'm dead, criticise my stuff, if they agree that my songs are honestly meant, if lacking somewhat in talent, then I'll be happy enough. Matilda was an honest attempt for me to try to say, this is bullshit, Mitty. You know, all these young boys are dying for nothing. What are we doing across there, you know? So that's what I tried to convey with the song, so I can live with that. I could wish that I'd put some things differently. There's not a songwriter alive who doesn't look at their past songs and think, oh, maybe I should have said this, or done this, or done that. No such thing as the perfect song exists. However, having said all that, I can live quite comfortably and proudly with the song. The fact that it's come to mean so much to a lot of people, including veterans, which really pleases me. that's what gives me impetus to go on with it, if you like. I wasn't there. I mean, how can somebody who was born, decades after the Gallipoli expect to capture it? What a hope. Veterans especially, I'm talking veterans from Timor, from Vietnam, from all these different, Afghanistan, realise that I'm on their side. And that means something to them, because so often the public are not. Tommy this and Tommy that and Tommy how's your soul, the thin red line of heroes, and the drums begin to roll. So when they find, a tree-hugging, latte-sipping, greenie like me on their side, it's a bit of fillip to them. They realise, well, maybe we're not wasting our lives and our maybe we are doing something that people are supporting, if not admiring, at least. And that pleases me about Matilda. The fact that it's been accepted by the veterans, and the greenies and the peaceniks, and so all this cross-section of the population have got what they want out of this song, so it's appealing to them all. Now when I was a young man, I carried my pack, and I lived the free life of the rover. From the Murray's green basin to the dusty outback, oh, I waltzed in my Matilda all over. Then in 1915, my country said, son, it's time you stop rambling, there's work to be done. So they gave me a tin hat, and they gave me a gun, and they marched me away to the war. And the band played waltzing Matilda as the ship pulled away from the quay. And amidst all the cheers, the flag a-waving in tears, we sailed up for Gallipoli. And how well I remember that terrible day, our blood stained the sand and the water, and the howling at hell that they called Sula Bay. We were butchered like lambs of the slaughter. Johnny Turk, he was waiting, he primed himself well. He showered us with bullets, and he rained us with shell. And in 5 minutes flat, he'd blown us all to hell. Nearly blew us right back to Australia. But the band played waltzing Matilda when we stopped to bury our slain. We buried ours, and the Turks buried theirs, and we started all over again. And those that were left, we tried to survive in that mad world of blood, death and fire. And for 10 weary weeks I kept myself alive, though around me the corpses a big turkey shell knocked me off so it had. And when I woke up in the hospital bed and saw what it had done, I wished I was dead. Never knew there was worse things than dying. For I'll go no more waltzing Matilda all around the green bush far and free, or to hunt and beg. A man needs both legs. No more waltzing Matilda for me. So they gathered the crippled, the wounded, the maimed, and they shipped us back home to Australia. The armless, the legless, the blind, the insane, those proud wounded heroes of Suvla. And as our ship sailed in the circular quay, I looked at the place where big legs used to be, and thank Christ there was nobody waiting for me to grieve, to mourn, and to pity. But the band played waltzing Matilda as they carried us down the gangway, but nobody cheered. They just stood and stared, then they turned their faces away. And so now, every April, I sit on my porch and I watch the parade pass before me. I see my old comrades, how proudly they march, reviving old dreams of past glory. The old men march slowly, old bones stiff and sore. They're tired old heroes from a forgotten war. And the young people ask, what were they marching for? And I ask myself the same question. But the band plays waltzing Matilda, and the old men still answer the call. But as year follows year, more old men disappear. Someday no one will march there at all. Waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda, you'll come waltzing Matilda with me. Their ghosts may be heard as they march by that billabong. You'll come waltzing Matilda with me.
It's just a really wonderful song. I'm intrigued. Obviously, you didn't know and you didn't intend for the song to resonate as much as it did with Australians. Firstly, why do you think that is? Why have Australians embraced this song as strongly as they have?
I really don't know. I think it's the reflective nature of it. rather than the tub thumping, wasn't our Anzac's great, brave boys sort of thing. We get enough of that by the media and politicians, and I think most Australians get a bit sick of it. And if you talk to any veteran, and you, in your capacity, you've talked to hundreds of them, and I've talked to many, because I seek out their company when I can. And they won't glorify it. They don't thump any tubs. They know how a nasty, shitty business it is. And they know what it cost them personally as well as their mates who died. So they're a brotherhood that I'm allowed a sort of associate membership in, which really pleases me. And I think it's because there's this reflective sadness in it as well. It's an anti-war song, but I'm not denigrating their part in it. They were just the meat in the sandwich, They did their duty for many reasons, mostly not to let their mates down. As you and I both know. How many times have you heard that talk to, I couldn't let my mates down,
It's the one universal, isn't it? It doesn't matter whatever country you speak to. I've spoken to veterans from just about every country who has ever fought in a war. It's the absolute universal. You ask that very inane question, why did you do it? And their answer is, I was beside my mates, I had to. It's universal. And that's what I love about that song, is you capture that so brilliantly. And not just that song, but other songs as well that you've recorded, including The Gift of Years, which is one of my favourites about. And if people are listening to this, go and buy an Eric CD and listen to those songs. But The Gift of Years, I think, sums that up as well. I mean, what's your relationship now like with Matilda? I mean, Matilda it's not a song anymore. It's an anthem. Mm. It is, and I don't know if you even know this from your perspective. I'm sure you do, because I'm sure people tell you all the time. But it is one of the most engaging ways that people think of Anzac. When they think of Gallipoli, they think of that song. That song, rightly or wrongly, tells a lot of people the story of Gallipoli. It tells them everything they need to know. As I said, rightly or wrongly, that position. What's your relationship like with that song now, especially 40 years down the track?
It's a good relationship. Matilda and I coexist quite nicely together. I've not thought that Matilda's got in the way of my other songs. Most songwriters give their right arm if one of their songs catches the public consciousness. And I've had a few that have done that, so I'm happy enough. I'm proud of the song. What attracts a lot of people to it is the emotion. Now you as a historian know there's a couple of inaccuracies in the song, and which I didn't know at the time. I just went ahead.
So we're talking specifically about things like
Suvla Bay.
They gave me a tin hat. I mean, how do you respond to that criticism first?
Well,
when
the
learned people in coats tell you that you got it wrong.
Well, I tried singing. They gave me a forage cap. It didn't sound all that good, Suvla Bay, to me, because of a couple of musical songs, is what I knew about Gallipoli. And funnily enough, most Australians don't question it at all. If you ask them, our boys were there, It doesn't matter. I mean, I can live with them. There was once, I was doing an interview with Peter Goers of Adelaide radio station fame, and this bloke rang up and said, did you know, and he was very sort of forward about it, he said, did you know there's two glaring historical errors in your song? And I said, actually there's three. And there isn't, there's two. And I'm hoping that he's now still spending his life researching and looking for the third historical. You expect, I was trying to convey an emotion, that's why the song resonates with all these people. the emotion behind the message behind the song, they don't really care about the, crossing the T's and dotting the I's. That is your job, if you don't mind me saying so. And, you'd be crucified if you made the same mistakes as I did in a learned academic book, Okay, you can make the excuse I'm a songwriter, not a historian, just so far. And that's why I said earlier in this interview it was a careless song. I should have had more care about it, but I'm not. I'm pleased about how I managed to convey the emotion in the song, how it worked to this end denouement where the old veteran's sitting there and thinking, what's it all about? What's it all about? Why am I here? Why did we do it? How do I feel about it? So it ends in that. It goes from, him packing his swag and off to the army to sitting on his porch watching the parade pass him. So I was pleased with the structure of the song, how it took the listener start to finish and how it posed questions for the listeners. I didn't come to any conclusion and say this is all bullshit, it was all totally wrong, wasted time, the boys died for nothing. I just left the listeners up to make their own minds about that. So that's a long answer. I can live with Matilda quite nicely. It's become an anthem. Well, I'm not a big one for anthems. They tend to divide us rather than unite us, but I can live with it. Yep.
What about the line, one of the last lines in the song? The young people ask, what are they marching for? And I ask myself the same question.
Yep.
Most people interpret that as Anzac Day is a waste of time. We shouldn't be doing it. Not most people. I've heard people say that. It's the veterans saying, why are they bothering? They should just move on with their lives. Is that how you intended that line to be?
Not really. We should never forget, of course. But if we, in 2,000 years, well, let's say 200, we're not going to last 2,000, but in 200 years, if Australia is still defining itself with the blood of our soldiers shed at Gallipoli, then we're really going nowhere, One day, no one will march there at all. That's the important line. And it's happened already. If the song's all about Gallipoli, then no one who fought at Gallipoli is marching there anymore. So that's come true already. But what I was trying to say really badly, well, maybe not, who knows, was that we can't keep on defining ourselves, which maybe the average Australian doesn't, but our media certainly does, and our politicians make mileage out of it every bloody Anzac Day. That in 200 years' time, if we stand up and say, and so what quantifies your civilization in Australia here? I think it was, well, it was all these soldiers died at Gallipoli 200 bloody years ago. And if that's still happening, we're really not moving forward as a nation. We should always remember not just the soldiers, but everybody who's worked and died and helped to create the society that we live in. And the soldiers deserve their place as much as anybody else. But it can't be the be-all and end-all. And what worries me about Anzac Day today is the huge media event it's become, which I think does a great disservice to the boys themselves. That's my own personal view. I mean, I got asked a question in Victoria recently. I did a couple of concerts there, only for the money. I wasn't there for pleasure. So I went to Victoria. I did a couple of concerts, and this wee girl asked me if I was going to do anything this Anzac Day, and I said, no, I'm going to try to avoid it. And she said, well, what was your best Anzac Day? As though I was a bloody soldier, I said, well, it was a wee town in Victoria called Balmoral, 2,000 people. Middle of nowhere, middle of the Mallee Scrub, not the most attractive wee village. But the people who live there love it. And they invited me, the police sergeant, who was the prime mover in the Anzac Day, he was an ex-Vietnam boy, he invited me to go and sing at their service. And it was great. There was a school band. It was me and John singing a couple of songs. A couple of other people. Not a camera in sight, not a media person in sight. It was a community, small community, doing the best to remember. The 7 or 8 who died during World War I, And we all went to the RSL afterwards, which is a huge asbestos building, and had teen sandwiches, quarters of the Women's Association, CWA. It was an Australian event, and it was great. A community Anzac Day. So if Anzac Day has no other application at all, if it brings a community together, then it served the purpose. No matter if it's a pity the purpose had to be, all these boys dying in the war. But small communities and small young countries like us need this. So that's why we make this big thing about Anzac still. But I don't guarantee anything. I hope that after this centenary stuff has died down, which is dying down already, that the hype, the media hype and the political hype surrounding Anzac Day will start to die down. And it'll become less of a media event and less of a political pitch and become again a community event. I'm hoping that's going to happen. I see no sign of it yet. The Anzac Day marches in the major cities anyway are just, the commercial channels just rub their hands together and think, oh boy, here we go. Free to air.
I think you're right. I mean, I grew up in West Wyalong, New South Wales, 2,500 people, and I used to march on Anzac Day as part of the school, and my dad was in the town band, and my grandfather was president of the Mallee Plains sub-branch of the RSL. So I agree, the community spirit. I say that to people all the time. You want a good Anzac Day, get out of the city and go out to the bush. You're right what you say, that there is a dark side. I don't want to be too melodramatic, but there is a dark side to Anzac remembrance today. It is commercialised in some respects. Some people use it for, nefarious purposes in some way. It has moved away from where it began. When it comes to your songs, do you see? I know that most people love them and relate to them, and it's a really important part of their lives. But do you see a negative aspect to the way your songs have ever been used, to the way people remember the war via your music?
Yeah. I've been accused of it quite a few times of perpetuating Anzacary through my songs. And I can see some truth to that. So when you're accused of doing that, any creative artist, when they're accused of doing things for nefarious reasons or what they see, have to examine their own selves and their own consciousness. Well, why did I do this? Why did I write this song? Why am I still singing this song? Am I singing this song to perpetuate Anzacary, to have people clapping and cheering, to make money? That's a joke, that last one. Why am I doing it? Well, we've already explored why I wrote the song, and, people can believe me or believe me not, my motives for writing it. Why do I keep singing it? Because it's still bloody happening. I sang it in Semaphore RSL last year. Some local boys revived this dead RSL, Did a great job. I went down, did a concert with them. And there was a couple of Afghanistan veterans there. 41, 42 boys have lost there. And they were telling me a couple of stories which are really, a bit off-putting. But of course I'm fascinated, I'm all ears. And they're telling me, half hoping that maybe a song might come of one of their tales. But they hang on to every word of Matilda, because they can identify with, quite a few of the things within the song, the ethos of the song. So the day that Australia's not, sticking their nose into other people's business and send their boys and girls out in harm's way, then Matilda will become a relic of a past existence. And it'll be consigned to the dustbin of history sooner rather than later. But it's still got some legs yet, unfortunately. So that's why I keep doing it. Keep hammering this little message, I'm a peacenik. I've always been, I always thought, I should have wasted all this. And that's why people hang on to it still. I can hear the silence when I'm singing it. And everybody's in their own wee different space when they're listening to that song. And all these different videos are playing in all these different heads in the audience. I know all this, the day that I sing it and everybody goes, oh, Jesus, God, not the band, but Buddy Wilsmith again, then God help me, I'll stop singing it. It's not happened. Will it happen before I die? I don't know, but there's no sign of it. We seem to be enmeshed in this endless cycle of violence. And I think in some strange way the song gives people some sort of comfort, Here we are all listening to this anti-war song together and all identifying together, so we're not alone here. That's what music does, it unites people. I'd like to think that's what Matilda does.
I think it was John Lennon that said about music that if you want to listen to it and form your own interpretations, that's fine. I'm happy for you to do that. But they're my songs that I wrote about my life and my experiences. And, he went into terms to demonstrate that it was pretty basic, the process that he led to. Do you feel like that with your songs? I mean, I feel sitting here talking to you that we own Matilda. It doesn't matter what you think about it, Eric. We own that. That's part of our story now. It's we all get something out of it. How do you feel about your songs? Not just Matilda, but your songs in general. Do you feel that there's something you wanted to say and you've put them out there and people are welcome to interpret how they like? Or is it a gift that you give to everyone so that they can do what they like with it?
Oh, gift is too strong a word. I've always regarded my songs as sort of a presentation with a canvas. I know this is pretty corny, but a canvas with quite a bit of blank space there. Fill in your own colours, I've always thought the best songs leave spaces for your mind to get in there, in between the words, There's songs that are just so wordy and so fast-paced and so tense that it's hard for you to get in there. I've always thought that one of the better things about my songs is at least spaces for people's minds to get in, souls and hearts to get in there. I'm quite happy to present it to people and say, right, this is the canvas I painted, but there's still space there for you to put your own colour. Do what you like with it. I've never felt precious about my songs, They're not tablets from the mountain brought down my nose. They're bloody songs. Some of them are good and some of them are really crap. But I've never felt precious about them. I mean, there's a thing on Facebook just now, this bloke put on a parody of No Man's Land, It's actually a parody of the people who sing it rather than of the song itself. I've heard it before quite a few times. And there's been a few negative reactions to it from my fans, how dare they, this is sacrilege, that sort of thing. But I don't mind. Whatever people do, if it's going to be a parody, try to make it funny or witty. You know, if it's not, you're wasting your time. Parodies are supposed to be funny or witty. So do what you like with it. Do a parody, but make it funny. Do a critique of it, but make it thoughtful. Make it thought-provoking. You know, just don't come out with blank statements. And whatever people do with my songs, whatever people think of my songs, I don't give a fuck. I honestly don't. I wish I did, but I don't. I mean, they're mine. I know what went into making them. I know the motives behind all of them, and I can't question any of it. So I can live with them quite easily and happily, because I know why I wrote them. And, you know, I'm an imperfect human being in most ways, but it's the purest thing I've ever done in my life. It's the most honest thing I've ever done, is writing these songs. I keep coming back to the word honesty, you know. And that's because we live in a world that's full of fakery. And the only recourse I have as a performing creative artist is to point and say, well, at least it's honest. It's a word that's not in great use these days. So I can live with them, fair enough. Yeah. The next song, First the Children. As I say, it's a theme I've revisited a few times. I've not sung this much. I don't know why I'm attempting it now, actually. I should do something I know. Once again the dogs of war have been unmuzzled and unleashed. Oh, and once again we'll wallow in the belly of the beast. Once again we'll look to blood to slake our righteous thirst. Oh, and once again, as always, our children will die first. For we'll send them off to war, all our bright and shining youth, fill their heads with visions splendid and our version of the truth. So that when the battles join, for better or for worse, we will pray to God our children will kill their children first. In our long journey from the caves to where we all now stand, we've often turned history's page with a cruel and vengeful hand, and sent our bright and shining youth to the killing fields to die in yet one more bloody war, for yet one more bloody lie. So once again the dogs of war have been unmuzzled and unleashed, and once again we'll wallow in the belly of the beast, and send our bright and shining youth to the killing fields to die in yet one more bloody war, for yet one more bloody lie.
Is this song a bookend to Matilda?
No. No, it's just a continuation of a theme. I mean, it doesn't say anything that Matilda hasn't said already, to be honest. Just definitely just reinforces the message. I mean, No Man's Land, Gift of Years, a few others have written about, As If He Knows, even about the horses. They're just reinforcing the message that Matilda put out there in 1971. They're not presenting anything particularly new. Everyone knows war's a waste of, life and a waste of time and stupid business that shouldn't be encouraged, and yet we still dive into it. So I've never thought I've said anything particularly original or thought-provoking. But I've kept hammering away at the message, that's all.
And finally, what's next for Eric Bogle? What's the next project? What are we going to see next?
Well, that's the $1,000 question. Used to be the $64,000 question, but at my age it's the $1,000 question. I find it hard to motivate myself to write songs. To give a song a good chance in life, you've got to care about writing it. You've got to care about the subject matter. I don't write love songs. I don't write songs about bonking other people or other people want to bonk me. There's a big market for that, but I leave that to other people. So I've always had to get involved with what I'm writing about to motivate myself to pick up the pen. And if I don't care, which I increasingly don't, then I'm finding it hard to pick up the pen to write anything. Also, people keep saying to me about modern things, for instance, when all the, bombings and Muslim stuff started, and people would say to me, well, you should write a song about it. And I said, well, I did, In fact, I've written two. Nobody will listen then, and I doubt Henry will listen now. So, and that's the troubling thing as well. I've lost count of the number of times people said, you should write a song about this. And I've said, well, I have. That's because mainly I'm a fairly obscure songwriter. So that leaves me with the question, do I have anything new to say? And no. I mean, some people think I've drunk at the well of World War I often enough as it is. And I think that as well. So I think you reach ultimate saturation level as a songwriter. And what I want to avoid is writing, I've lived for a long time and here's my wisdom being imparted to you, sort of songs, which a lot of elderly songwriters tend to start writing when they get to a certain age. And I'm avoiding that like the plague. The thought of me actually trying to tell people to live their lives it's a joke, because I'm still a witless, directionless teenager, as we all are, really. Maturity is just a word invented by somebody. It doesn't exist. Experience, yes, but maturity, nah. So I'm not sure if I've got anything left to offer, I'll be honest with you. I don't say that happily or lightly. I say it regretfully. What I try to be is grateful for what I've produced so far. Because I'm not ruling it out that I won't write anything. I wrote a song as a tribute to my mate John McNaught just a few months ago. So I'm still capable of writing. It's just getting the motivation to do so. And to be honest, I think this world's a pretty shitty place at the moment. And any song I write is not going to make it any less shitty.
Well, I'm sure I speak for everyone listening that anything you do decide to put out in the future, we'll gratefully receive. But just thank you so much for your time. It's been really wonderful to hear your insights, and thank you for sharing.
Okay. I'd offer you another beer, but you've drunk them all.